The Mark of the Rani, the third serial of Doctor Who's 22nd season, first broadcast in two 45-minute parts on the 2nd and 9th of February 1985. The Doctor, played by Colin Baker, and his companion Perry Brown, played by Nicola Bryant, end up in the 19th century in the village of Killingsworth, specifically during the Industrial Revolution and the Luddite movement. The Luddites, of course, being a group of protesters and weavers who sought to destroying modern machinery because it was taking away from they thought it was taking away from the manufacturing process. Human beings doing things now and machines being able to do things faster, they felt we're taking money out of our hands and food out of our children's mouths, so we're going to destroy it. But anyway, they arrive in the village of Killingsworth and they find that the Doctor's old enemy, the Master, played once again by Anthony Ainley, is around causing trouble. But he's not the only Gallifreyan who's causing trouble around Killingsworth, as they also discover a rogue time lady known as the Rani, played by Kate O'Mara. She has quickly become a fan favourite over the years, and while she has not yet appeared in New Who, they apparently did at one point try to use her as a misdirect. While Kate O'Mara and the Rani only actually appeared in two on-screen appearances in the 80s, one being in here, The Mark of the Rani, and the other being Time and the Rani with the 7th Doctor. In 2014, to distract from the fact that Missy was in fact the new Master, they had apparently dubbed the lines did ADR over the scenes so that they wouldn't risk revealing the secret early while they were filming. But one thing they apparently tried to do to throw fans off with Missy, Michelle Gomez, was to have her say something like, well, really what I am is sort of a random analytic neural interface or something similar, or Rani for short. Apparently fans didn't really take, and yeah. Anyway, what the Rani is trying to do is, she's more a time lady who, she sees her experiments as the most important thing, and human life, bleh. I mean, if they die, they die. I mean, what's important is that I advance science. Basically, imagine if you mixed up a female Bond villain with Sheldon Cooper, and you pretty much got it. Anyway, she's managed to extract a chemical from the minds of the workers, who mainly work in the mines, and she's managed to extract a chemical from their brain that normally allows them to sleep. Basically meaning that these people can work longer and don't need sleep, which causes aggression and causes the kind of protests that is ultimately seen as the Luddite movement. I mean, it's clarified they're not actually Luddites, but basically they're no longer allowed to sleep, so of course they're angry, aggressive, and cause problems. Now, the Master wants to strike up a deal with the Rani. If she allows him to take over Earth, he'll allow her to continue her experiments. And the Master pretty much just wants to turn Earth now into a power base. Now, he sees it as a little too primitive right now, so he wants to make sure a certain meeting of humans that was going to happen, he makes sure it happens. One person who the Doctor ends up meeting is Lord Ravensworth, played by Terence Alexander, who's the landowner, but specifically the one that the Master wants to make sure happens is George Stevenson, who's played by Gorn Granger. And I want to talk about George Stevenson because while he is seen as the father of the modern railway, he is also the father of Robert Stevenson, who created the rocket, and who was actually one of the inspirations for one of my high school houses. So, yeah. Anyway, George Stevenson has been planning a meeting of some of the greatest minds of the age, including himself, Thomas Tedford, Michael Faraday, Humphrey Davy, and Mark Brunel. The Master wants to make sure that this meeting happens so that some of the greatest stuff that happened in human history can still happen, and he'll have a much more updated power base. If he manages to turn Earth into a power base, and the Rani can still continue her experiments. which she also manages to do via mind control, as she seemingly managed to develop something approaching maggots that if she feeds one to somebody, she can overtake their mind and they'll do as she suggests. And once again, this episode does have a few iconic moments, with I think one of the best ones being at the end of part one. The Master and the Rani have seemingly managed to capture the Doctor, and the Doctor is sent on a cart rolling down a hill, to which the villagers who have under the Rani's control have already chucked the TARDIS down the mine shaft. At which point they see the Doctor rolling away, they manage to catch him, load him onto a train cart, and send him hurtling down towards the mine before he is ultimately saved at the start of part two by George Stephenson. And they do some pretty cool stuff in it. As I said, the sleep chemical, the end of part one, that's pretty cool. The mind control maggots, and also the Rani has one thing that I personally was a little bit skeptical about in part two, which is tree bombs. And these aren't like trees that if you step on them they explode. No, she's seemingly sets up in the forest a series of landmines, or at least they resemble landmines, kind of hidden under the forest floor. And if you step on them or disturb them, there's a big explosion, and then you're turned into a tree, which seems a little silly, but and it ultimately ends up with, spoiler alert, the Doctor and Perry managing to defeat the Master and the Rani, who have tried to escape using the Rani's TARDIS. However, the Doctor has removed a critical part from it, and the TARDIS becomes unstable and eventually knocks over one of the Rani's experiments, which was a shrunken down stasis dinosaur, which swiftly begins to grow and traps the Master and the Rani pinned against the walls of her TARDIS. Now, the only real thing I would say against this story that I would say I maybe wasn't that keen on is I do feel they could have given Perry a little bit more to do. I mean, basically in part two, while the Doctor is off doing stuff, he gives her the task of finding a way of allowing the people to sleep, because of course they've had the sleep chemical removed from their brains. To which she comes up with or attempts to come up with a draft made up of valerian, something that Doctor Who will later recycle in their adventure game, The Gunpowder Plot, i.e. the sleeping draft is made of valerian, and while I personally am not that much of a botanist, I can understand that valerian somehow helps you sleep or makes you sleepy. And she's off collecting it, and then when towards the end of the story, when the Master and the Rani have left, she says, well, I've still got to give this valerian to Lord Ravensworth and Stevenson, because he allowed them to sleep, at which point the Doctor presents the chemical out, already done it. Just like, well, you could have given her a little bit more to do. I mean, she's not... I just feel like Perry wasn't necessarily given that much to do, aside from be in peril, scream, and like, I feel they could have given her a chance to use her botany skills to actually make her own draft. I just feel like they could have given her a little bit more. But Mark of the Rani, I would say it's a good story. I think it's actually one of Colin Baker's better ones. It has some iconic moments, including that mine train chase, and you know what? I think it's a good one. Anyway, I've only got one last story to do with the Sixth Doctor's era before I'll finish with the Sixth Doctor, that being Time Lash. So, when my next review comes out, you know what to expect. Anyway, till next time, see ya.